Sahith Theegala is one of the most exciting young stars on the PGA Tour, and his swing is anything but conventional. Yet despite its unorthodox look, he's found success at the highest level of this game. From a standout college career at Pepperdine to contending and winning on the PGA Tour, Theegala has proven that a swing doesn't have to be textbook to be elite. In this video, we're going to break down what makes his swing so unique, his whippy, field-based motion, his creative shot making, and the adjustments that allow him to compete with the best ball strikers in the world. Like me. How does a swing like this hold up against the best in golf, and what can you learn from it to improve your own game? Let's dive in. So before we dive into his swing evaluation, let's hear from his own words about some of his swing thoughts.
It changes from week to week, but I've based my whole game kind of around the anti-left. The one kind of swing thought and key that I have to kind of take the left side of the golf course off is just turn my body a hair more through impact and swing just a touch more left. That's kind of the overarching one I'd say that I have pretty consistently.
So why is it important to what he just said, that he is trying to eliminate the whole left side of the golf course? Because obviously you would like a one-sided miss, but it's very important to think about this. And this is why knowledge of the golf swing's cause and effect can help you create a swing that you can favor to eliminate one side or the other. Now there's the old ball flight laws, that path controlled direction and club face controlled curvature. Now with the knowledge that we have gained from tools like TrackMan, we have now figured out it's the other way around. It's face that controls direction and path controls curvature. It has to do with face override, but it's always based on your target. So the reason I bring this up is if he took lessons in the 90s with the old ball flight laws, it would be very frustrating for him because he would have been taught the wrong stuff. So that is why education is the key, and that is why I'm always on top of my education and giving you guys some for free to follow along. But let's talk about this swing. So we know he is trying to have a motion where he wants his path left because he's taking out the left side of the golf course. So we're going to start off by always drawing our favorite Barney purple, lower line, upper line, and then we have found a new name for yellow, and it's called Mellow Yellow. And thank you for the suggestion yesterday. I'll leave that comment right now. And Mellow Yellow, we're going to put a right in the back brace line. So now all we need is a green. I always like Ninja Turtle green, but I don't think that's going to suit. But we're going to put green on the right brace line here, and one more from the face on just to make it pretty. Let's do this in red, and we're going to draw a little box around the head. So this is going to see motions. Now we can see on the left side of the screen that he is trying to set up his body left of the target, and we know this. Let's draw this in red here where we draw the foot line. If you look at the shoulders, they're definitely pointing slightly left, the knees are definitely pointing slightly left, and the hips are pointing slightly left. So the main body is pointing left of his foot line. Now that is to accentuate that feeling of a path left, which is what he's going after. Let's delete those and let's go to the right side of the screen. Now we're going to draw a shoulder tilt and draw that line straight from the center of the chest right through the hands, which is pretty connected there. We see a very slight forward press, and this is okay. You can get away with a slight forward press like this because if you draw the shaft line straight through, it is at least inside of his shoulder. And we're going to use our favorite 999 tool just to check in relation to the body that ball position is favoring his left shoulder. So it's a little unorthodox setup. It's not too unusual. I've seen worse on the PGA Tour, and I've seen obviously much better. But what we're going to look at is this first move on the way back, because we do see a lot of sliding over to the right side, and we're going to draw where that center of his chest is straight down to the ground, and we're going to see how much sliding he does. And there it is. Now you can even see that right brace line in this area here. He definitely moves over that right brace line, as opposed to the more traditional, we see a lot of turning with the hip and the upper body moves with that turn. So we still see the spine angle when that happens to point a little bit straighter. His does not point as straight because when he starts sliding those hips, even though his weight is getting over to his right foot, he is doing it with little turn, and we start having a position where we start breaking away from our lower body. Now he's going to have to reconnect that at impact and kind of connect the upper body and the lower body together as he drives the weighting towards his impact line. So let's draw that impact line before we forget. And the impact line is going to be basically right from the outside of his foot there. So that's the goal. So he has established a pretty significant power V, and the power V is this area here, and he can only really do that by sliding the hips. So if he didn't slide the hips and he just turned, his power V wouldn't be as much. So we can see he's trying to utilize some lateral sway here to his advantage. So he's really loading up in this position without a lot of turn. Now, does that sacrifice his top position? Not necessarily. You can see even without a lot of hip turn, look at the amount of shoulder turn he is able to establish on the right side of the screen. We're going to draw this in blue so you can see that is well past 90, and the club shaft is not even close to parallel. So here's another example of the more turn you create, the less your hands have to be involved. Ideally, in my personal opinion, if this was him, I would love to see that club shaft match his shoulder turn, because that would be truly connected, but it does sacrifice some distance. So although it will increase his accuracy, they don't really care so much with the driver because they're just trying to bomb it out there. But now on the left side of the screen, we can see his left arm definitely gets higher. Does it get deep enough? Yes, it does. It falls just on that right heel. So that club is definitely deep enough. But now here's where the swing gets a little bit unorthodox. But in my opinion, I absolutely love this swing. But before we check that, let's just do a quick little check on his face angle. So his face angle and his left forearm are really close together. So you don't see a big bow like we see with the other two gentlemen that we did the wrist bowing video a couple of days ago, John Rahm and Dustin Johnson, and we learned why they did their wrist bow. So if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. It can really help you understand wrist bowing and when you're supposed to use it. But let's do our patented triangle check and see what happens on that first move to see if it is a traditional move or if he has to do some sort of reconnecting. So you can see already that path is going to be a little bit steeper with his hands. So his hands have moved outside of that center. More traditional players, you see those hands fall down the center of that triangle, and right about when it gets to the bottom of the triangle, then it starts to cross over as the body turns, ensuring that the club gets dropped in the slot and it's more connected. But because he is steep top of his swing, it becomes very challenging to drop that much with the hands and then turn. So that'll throw up your sequencing. And keep in mind that he is already starting to shift towards that impact line. So that shifting will also move the hands close to the golf ball, creating a little bit more steeper as well. So we've got a couple of issues. So he's starting to figure this out. It's like, look, I need the club to drop from up here to down here really quickly. What can I do to help that? It's not going to be the hands and arms because we see that he's not capable of moving those hands and arms down initially. So he's going to have to do it with his ding, you got it, his shoulders. So watch that right shoulder. From this point on, the right shoulder is everything. And for those that are questioning, do I think about the right shoulder, left shoulder? Who cares? If you just think about left shoulder going up, right shoulder going down, whatever, it's the same thing. Just pick one and choose it and see if that works. So the right shoulder, you can see, goes straight down. So from there to there, look at that right shoulder, it's going straight down. So we're looking at this one right here, and it's moving down. Now what that'll do is it pushes the hands straight down to that lower plane line, and he doesn't have to manipulate the wrist hinge at all. He just carries that same angle straight down. So we see the same angle over here. There's that face angle, and there goes his left lead arm. So it's about the same. So he hasn't sacrificed any angles at this point, but I think he's going to start sacrificing his lower body, and just wait till you see what happens. So as we get down to close to impact, we can see now that that club has fallen slightly below the plane line. So this is where the tilting really helps him even more. He might hit the ground slightly before the golf ball, pop it up in the air. So he has still learned to keep that right shoulder tilting. And this is probably the most tilt I've ever seen in a Tour Pro right there. Look at the amount of tilt on the right side. That is just phenomenal. But what happens to the hands? So watch the hands. If he were to turn, which way are the hands going to go? They're going to go this way. He's trying to get his hands to move in a straighter line, probably where his foot line is. And look at that. The right shoulder gets those hands to move out enough so that we see some daylight. And look at the momentum from there to there. Those hands keep going along that line only because of the shoulder tilt. So here's 1 or 2 frames after impact. Let's do a quick check on his shoulder tilt. Now remember, the average Tour Pro is 20, 25, maybe 30 degrees. So at the top of his swing, he's roughly 35, close enough for government work. As he strikes down into impact, 1 frame right after impact, look at this number. This is just ridiculous. 85 degrees. That's almost 90 degrees of tilt at impact. 50 degrees of change from the top of the swing. That's twice to 2.5 times the average Tour Pro. So this is not a swing I would recommend specifically for us couch potatoes. If we take one swing like that, man, our spuds will just boom, our shirt will rip off, and nobody wants to see that, quite honestly, and our backs would pop out and something else would give in. Do not, for the life of you, try this, but it only works for him because of that steep top position, and he can't get his arms down, so he has to exaggerate that tilt. Now, this is ensuring that he's taking the left side out of play just because of the way he is set up open to his target. He is not swinging left. His path is left because he is aiming left. Remember, that path club face relationship is always in relation to what? A target. So make sure it is the target you need to set up for and adjust your position that way. On the right side of the screen, you can definitely see this position. Look at that right shoulder. It is just so ridiculous. But the good thing is, let's put this in the right tool here. The good thing is once you get out to here, he is still relatively connected. You see the right hand releases because that is a neutral grip that he had. He didn't have a strong grip. If that was a strong grip, you would probably see the right hand more under as opposed to releasing. So we know that's a neutral grip and he's making this work, but we definitely see everything is swinging up at this point. Look at the knees. The knee tilt is swinging up. The hip tilt is swinging up. The shoulders definitely swinging up. The hands are moving up. And how much are they moving up? You know, let's do this. I'm going to draw a little circle over every one of these hand positions, and we're going to go right before impact. So I'll edit this. I'll come right back to you. Okay, so this is the one frame for his hand position throughout the downswing. So we can definitely see they move away from him, and at some point they're having, obviously because they're connected to his body, they have to come back and move up. Now this one with the X is where he struck the golf ball. Where is his hands moving as he strikes it? They're moving well up right before it hits the golf ball, so much so that they just all of a sudden take a detour and go straight up to the sky. But it's definitely wider on the way through because that's where the release happens and you extend outward. But what I want you to look at is how much of this is carried over right there. So you might look at this and say, well, you know what, that's okay. We have this 90-degree angle right about here, and that's pretty normal. But what is not normal is that's not really 90 degrees, because if you take a look at where his shoulder tilt is, watch this. So we have a lot more shoulder tilt. We see that the spine angle is going to be pointing way out to here. Remember, the next frame is where he hits the golf ball. So he's carrying a lot more than 90 degrees in relation to his tilt. So if we draw this in our yellow and we're going to draw a little circle here, we can see where it is perpendicular to that circle. Let's draw this in green. And we're going to try and get right about there. So that would be 90 degrees if his club shaft were there. So he's before 90 degrees. So let's look at how much angle he is actually carrying over. So he is actually at 110. So he's carrying over 20 more degrees of impact power. And you can see this next frame, boom, right there. He just struck it. So I would not suggest tilting like he does, because if you do, like I said, you know, you're probably not going to play golf for very long. You might be a Tiddlywinks Championship of 2028. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like this swing? Is it one you want to emulate? Do you kind of have tendencies to do this? If you want to learn how to take one side out of play, it's all down to setup, but then it's also down to your physical abilities. Obviously, this is one of the best golfers in the world. Hits the ball a ton, and you can see why. Unrealistic for most of us. Really cool swing to look at, to see the cause and effect. Hope that helps you. I'll see you next time. Fairways and greens.